So I've been writing a story called Izanagi, and I've been making videos about it for a while, but no one's talking about what actually goes on within the story. Well, in this video, I decided now it's time to talk about the actual plot. When I normally tell the premise of the story to someone, they normally aren't that interested, due to how it doesn't really explain what happens within it. I'll put it on screen. It literally leaves more questions than answers. It doesn't really explain the plot or what the story is about. It could just be me being bad at explaining my story, but it also could be because of how it's more about a premise but a world. So for you guys to actually understand what I'm doing with the story, I've summarized some of the arcs, 1 to 13, to tell you what the story is about, while attempting to leave out the most amount of spoilers I can.
Arc 1 is primarily inspired by two things, with hints of others sprinkled throughout. The Hunter exams from Hunter x Hunter and Kengan Ashura, as I was watching it at the time. There are hints of inspiration from other places like Naruto's Chunin exams or Dragon Ball Z's tournaments. Similar to the Hunter exams, this arc really doesn't introduce a power system, at least a proper power system. What I mean is that you are just revealed to two parts of the power system. What Rei-aura is, and how the generation of it works, and second is critical hits, sparks that appear sometimes when people land a hit. It happens when aura ignites, and it does so randomly throughout a fight. It can't be controlled, but the chance of it happening can be. There are two factors, and you could see them as going hand in hand or opposing each other. One is flow. If you keep consistent, your aura has a higher chance of igniting. The second is risk. This plays into how emotions affect aura. Risk could mean several things, like fear. The more risk you are in, the more likely you can land one. This could be fighting at a clear disadvantage, like not being defensive at all. This is actually good due to how aura generation works. In summary, it's like a style meter. Those fighters who are clearly better would have a better chance to land one, but also the weaker ones also have a chance. Risk is a more clear factor than flow due to how it grows in chance faster than flow does, like these two graphs on screen. These are the powers we have, but they are dependent on the characters actually fighting. This is where we get to the true power system of this arc, fighting styles. This mostly appears in the second half of the arc, where it takes more inspiration from Naruto and Kengan Ashura. While watching Kengan Ashura, I really was attracted by two things. How the characters' backstories were told, and also how their fighting styles feel more than just how they fight. It's powers, even though they arguably are at times. We see how most of these styles are taken from things in real life. We see grappling, wrestling, Muay Thai, and more. The matchups are grounded in reality while allowing each style to shine. So in my story, I want to take a similar approach. In this arc, we have two main characters, Kuro and Shiro. Kuro is trained in Kyokushin Karate and Taido, less in Taido. In addition to this, we see how, with some of the footwork, there is a clear inspiration from capoeira. This acts as a way for him to weave his kicks into his fighting more and makes him unpredictable, a feature which would make sense the more you learn about him. Shiro is trained in 4 fighting styles. One is a fictional one called Fushiba. It's inspired from Baki. It's basically using your body as a whip. Second is wrestling, one he is quite good at but doesn't use much. The third is Wing Chun, his primary one, and his final is karate, one he recently got training in at the time the arc starts. Even though he isn't trained in it, we see how his fighting style takes inspiration from boxing, mostly with the footwork. This fits his more aggressive style, and his aggression is rooted in his backstory.
At the start of the arc, both of these two are friends. But when the tournament starts, something happens which puts them on opposing ends. This is where we see the story take two diverging paths. As for Shiro, we see his darker path while we see Kuro go on his Naruto-esque journey, trying to reach onto Shiro the best way he can, in a fight. In my story, fighting is more than just violence. It's a language. To simplify it, you can use punches to convey things like feelings or words. You become better at understanding them, the better you are at fighting. This leads to the final fight between them, where Shiro wins and leaves. This becomes the inciting incident for the next 3 arcs, Kuro going after Shiro. Some other things about this arc before we move on. Firstly, who even are these two? Kuro comes from Kazumura, where this arc, the victory trials, take place. Now, Kuro is a kid who isn't liked by most of the village. He lives in isolation. You could view this similar to Naruto, but he actually has a mother. There's a twist, though. We are told something happened to Kuro's mother. Now she is mentally a kid. She can't take care of herself, so he is made to do so, as a kid. It's parentification, and it's something that clearly affected him. He does get help from one adult, but he isn't always there. What about his father? Well, he is gone on a journey, one for a challenge. Kuro doesn't know where he is, and hasn't seen him since he was 6. He is also the reason that Kuro is disliked, technically. Kuro's father is Sekai, and Sekai is kind of famous. The problem is that people don't actually believe that Kuro is his son. This is because of something called soul density. It isn't that relevant, but it's basically a representation of someone's talent. Kuro was born with only 90%, which is below average, and since his father has so much soul density, it makes it seem that Kuro isn't his son. This is further implicated due to how Kuro takes more after his mother and grandfather when it comes to looks. He embraces the fact he isn't liked openly, treating it like a joke, but it's clear it's a way to cope. He bottles up and uses his jokes as a way to deal with it. It also feeds into the reason he is a trickster. He doesn't take the words said against him seriously, so he doesn't take a lot of things seriously. By making everything a joke, he is basically playing a trick on everyone. Plus, a lot of people underestimate him, which makes his tricks easier to do. He has 2 friends, except for Shiro. One of them comes from outside the village. Only one of his friends is someone from the village, which you can also discount due to how he is technically a family friend. Kuro is lonely due to his situation. In this arc, we see Kuro get 2 meat people from outside the village, which gives him a chance to actually bond with others who aren't prejudiced against him. Kuro has one goal, and that's to become the strongest, and to do that, he wants to defeat the strongest beast, Gigos. The trials to him are basically just a test to see if he is on the path to achieving his goal. Shiro is someone who recently came to the village 6 months ago. He ran away. He is snarky and cocky. Unlike Kuro, he was born with above-average soul density and is also way more talented/skilled when it comes to certain things. He is liked because of this and his looks. He is basically the opposite of Kuro in many ways. The interesting thing with his character is how he is both unempathetic and empathetic. The inciting incident for the two-splitting is when Shiro's past comes back. In Shiro's mind, he is protecting Kuro by distancing himself from him, when that's really not the case. The trails have 2 phases I identify. First, it's the stuff before the tournament. For example, the house segment, where they have to find one out of 32 statues to progress. The problem is that when a door is opened or closed, it teleports somewhere else in the house. This makes it pretty confusing and hard to get out. As fighting is also something you can do, this all can become a hassle pretty fast. Next, you have the tournament, where the first bracket is less of an actual fight and just who can get the Jade Blade first.
What happens is that they fight for a minute, and after that a column appears with a Jade Blade on top.
The first fighter 2 get the Jade Blade progresses. After this, you have arcs 2 and 3. The reason I'm explaining these 2 together is because they both have the same overarching plot line of Kuro heading to Shiro. These 2 arcs also do 3 similar things. The first one is introducing the other main characters of Gin, Ansai, and technically Edward.
I don't know if he is going to be a full-fledged main character yet.
The second is having their own conflicts and stories. For example, Corazon and Tsunakage. Their plot is to destroy Chironia to make it anew. Throughout the arc, we find out their reason for it, why their reasoning is real, but it goes too far to the point of affecting innocence. These conflicts are dealt with within the arc, and technically don't do a lot for the story. They are really just used to world build or give our 2 new main characters something to deal with. The third is world build. As you are finally leaving the village, you get to see what the world is actually like and seeing some things like the politics. This is inspired by how One Piece does similar things with its story. Corruption is quite a clear thing, and Arc 2 especially covers that with Chironia. Something else this arc does is introduce part of the power system. Gauntlets and gears. Types of powered weapons. It expands upon Arc 1 and what we are told about Rei-aura already. They have both abilities and specials. Specials are basically abilities that are powered by Rei-aura, while abilities are things that have cooldowns. Arc 4 is basically a gateway to find out about Shiro's backstory and more of the reason he actually went away and thought he did the right thing. It is also a setup for the incident that happens in the next arc. These arcs are all a part of a saga that I call the Prologue Saga. Just to explain what I classify a saga as, it's a group of arcs that can be put under one umbrella. These arcs are really just an introduction to a much larger story, with it being one of the weaker points as well. Moreover, the style of the story,
Check out this video to find more,
would make this feel really like a shorter part of the story, especially with the arcs to come. Arc 5 is where things get interesting as we are introduced to one of the main antagonist groups, Uzumaki. Some lore first.
Ansai's goal is to kill all members of Uzumaki, and those affiliated with it due to the destruction of his village at their hands. Each member is based on an animal, the snake. Similar to the Phantom Troop, Uzumaki has an animal which symbolizes all of them. This is their logo, a snake that eats itself, and they are all part of the snake. This somehow leads to roguelike. It's an aura zone, and it basically makes you play a game. It's a tactical thing because you know if you haven't played a game, you most likely won't be good at it or know all the cheats. Roguelike transports you out of the real world into one of 3 zones. These zones are determined by marked locations.
For example, it could be Paris, a forest, and a cave. Then within the aura zone, each of these things would be generated randomly into a level, just like a randomly generating world in a video game. Any powered weapon would be taken and put into the system. You are put into a world where you have to fight against monsters, ranging in difficulty based on color. After beating monsters, using loot boxes or finding them, you are able to gain powered weapons, and you would be automatically given the skill to use that weapon perfectly while within the aura zone. If you die, you become a stone doll which the user gets to keep and use whenever they want. 2. Get out, you need to destroy a box in the middle of the border between all 3 zones. This box is protected by an angel, which is basically a boss fight. You also can get things like upgrades, which is part of the roguelike element, as certain ones are better than others. 4. Example, one of them is Requiem, and it revives you while haste only makes you move faster. There are also a few other rules within it to make it more like a game. Their goal isn't just to kill Ansai, but to make him suffer by killing his friends first. That's why they use this, and it resets everyone, which will give them a better chance at doing this. This arc expands on some of the things introduced and also shows what Kuro and Shiro could possibly gain in capabilities, due to how they haven't yet actually even been trained in the power system yet. Arc 6 follows up on the events of Arc 5, acting like a natural continuation of what happened and a conclusion. Since I don't want to spoil much, I won't say anything about it, as it heavily relates to the events of both arcs and the plot lines are concluded. After Arc 6 is Arc 7. It's about Kuro and Shiro as they finally get training in the power system and further training too. There's a callback to Arc 1 while the whole fighting style thing, as we see both of them learn capoeira due to 3 things. Firstly, because of how their master uses it. Second, because of how it weaves into the whole flow element of fighting. And third, because I wanted to go on a deep dive into fighting styles in my story. As this expands on what Arc 1 has, it's a natural progression of the story. In addition, Arc 5 showed the concept of masters and how they train their students, so this isn't a new concept either. This arc also helps expand how controlling aura actually feels, and how to learn it. Also, this arc does something else. In fact, it introduces more lore about Kuro's father. You see, the person training them both is someone who was trained by Kuro's father. Through this, we get hints of what Sekai actually could be like, especially when it comes to fighting.
It's obvious to assume that students fight like their masters. Heck, this is even shown in Arc 5 and 4, as Ansai is good at kickboxing and dodging attacks in a specific way. One more thing this arc does is introduce what Alma masks are. Check out this video to find out more. Another thing we learn is what Sekai's personality could be like, due to who the villain of the arc is. It's someone from Sekai's past. Turns out Sekai was an extremely cocky and disrespectful motherfucker. This is part of why this guy is a villain. He is Pry, and he becomes more relevant in later arcs due to how deep his hate is for Sekai. After this arc, we have Arc 8, Storm's Arena. Here we see training to use race abilities and how it actually feels. 2. Learn them. We get a better explanation of race abilities by seeing them in actions and seeing what they do.
From how some characters like Val are reintroduced, we get even closer perspectives on race abilities, like inscriptions and aura zones. Her view helps us understand how much planning has to go into making these things.
We learn about the different tactics people use in fights, especially when it comes to race abilities. Also, it links back to Arc 1 with how we are reintroducing some of the fighters and expanding upon them, like Val, who I already mentioned, and others like Kair. This arc gives our characters battle experience, something they would need in the next arc. Arc 9, Venturing Maltwin.
Similar to how One Piece travels to different islands, only this time it's one big country, with several different regions within it to explore. For example, Fantasia Cave. In the town of Kilnapore, a sealed cave, said to be sealed 300 years ago, would finally be opened. It was sealed with a high level of complex combinations of inscriptions, steins, and seals. The only way to get in was by cracking the combinations. It took 50 years for it to be done by several people.
In this cave is an intense amount of goods, weapons, and secrets buried away, and was supposed to be kept that way. It also has a high level of monsters kept within it, so much that it's called a pseudo-dungeon.
Firstly, a dungeon forms when a body dies, but due to the conditions of its death, the nature aura that expels from it warps the area and acts like a spawning ground for monsters and a gateway for almas. A pseudo-dungeon is basically a place which allows monsters to spawn at a high rate. This is basically like a gold rush, and you get to see it happen through the eyes of your characters. Another place we are introduced to is the Republic of Nochi Kang. Nochi Kang and Maltwin are in a similar situation to Hong Kong and China. The lore is that it used to be owned by a country called Bonorurs. This was before Maltwin was one united country. Geographically, it has always been one landmass, but it was split between several princes until united as one after a war. Nochi Kang was the only part not included due to its affiliations with Bonorus.
After a year-long debate, Bonorurs finally agreed to sell it for an unnamed price. It's a factor for why both countries are so close, and also explains how Nochi Kan is kinda its own thing. It's technically a part of Maltwin, but it's more like Maltwin is overseeing them. They have their own ruler. With this arc, you see how things like quests or the adventurer system actually works within Izanagi. It shows you how people get paid and how our characters navigate it. They also learn more actual fighting. Unlike in Storm's Arena, these fights aren't timed, there are no points or ring-outs, just pure fighting. Also, as it's not just a plain arena and they are fighting against things like monsters and beasts, there's a difference in how these fights play out and some of the tactics. We are also introduced to some more characters, which would have a large effect on the story, due to two things like the Mai Madred ant threat and how the arc ends. This arc changes the tone of the story and is supposed to act like a reality check for Kuro and Shiro. It first starts off as a cool adventure, but when reality actually comes in, we are shown how cruel the world can be, and how it affects them. They haven't been exposed to the world properly yet, it's all new to them, so this is a deep experience for them. It's something that would affect them for the rest of the story. Arc 9 is the longest arc in the story so far, probably double of the series. It's the longest for reasons, too, like how you explore 2/3 of Maltwin with our characters, or how many things go on within it. You have the overarching plot, but also shorter storylines. An example of this is the Mist Girl. Inspired from things like Sugar Mounting from Steel Ball Run, Mist Girl is someone who is cursed to stay at a lake and drag people in with her hypnotizing mist. What happened is that in her moral life, the girl drove someone to suicide, and that guilt manifested itself as a curse. This curse, specifically as it's where the girl took her life, and it also ironically stops the girl from doing the same. She is made to live through the same thing over and over, of killing people. This is a short story and is done in like 2 chapters, but it's still a cool bit of lore.
Arc 10 to 11 focuses back on Ansai, switching similar to how To Be Hero X switches main characters. As mentioned, there are 4 or 5 main characters, and we switch between their perspectives.
We couldn't with the first few arcs due to how they were all together, but now we can. We focus on Ansai, as he is actually attempting to do his goal. To do that, he has to venture into the criminal underworld.
We find out Ansai's goal is harder than originally thought. The members he fought are on the weaker side of Uzumaki. We see Ansai almost died, 2-1 in Arc 6, and that's one alone.
They are way more dangerous, so Ansai also needs to get stronger too. Part of that is reclaiming his father's weapons. We are shown what the underworld is truly like, and we see how interconnected it is to life itself.
2 where some economies can't exist without them.
It's world building, to help you understand how things like Uzumaki exist. Arc 12 focuses on Gin. He has technically completed his goal, but is still doing stuff. Gin's goal is to get into WAVE. It's this organization which helps people when affected by things like disease, victims of war, and more. They don't do anything violent, just help. As Gin wants to help people, this is perfect for him, and we get to see him do exactly that. It also acts like a way of more world building. Damn, that's a lot of world building.
Arc 13 focuses on the aftermath of Arc 9 and still world builds due to the location. This is the other area of Maltwin, Shinjuanhi.
Unlike the rest of Maltwin, it's this insanely advanced city. Within it, there are clearly gaps in social hierarchy and living status. This is partly due to how the city is built. To explain, it's basically a city on a city on a city on a city. Yeah, that's a city times 4. Inspired by some cities in China, each layer looks like you're at the bottom of a city,
While you could be 20 stories up, the rich and poor are clearly split because of this, and the police system is clearly corrupt, as they care for dealing with the higher levels, which leads to gangs basically ruling the lower levels. This stuff with how social hierarchies and living situations works would be further shown in other arcs. Each arc is supposed to build on the other arcs in new ways, to grow the story outwards instead of just progressing forward. This makes it so I don't have to build one thing in one arc, but slowly expand it out.
Arc 13 is also important due to how Arc 9 ends. I won't spoil it, but it's pretty important, and its aftermath has continued effects on the story going forward.
It's an incident which will affect the characters deeply, and sets up one of the main antagonists of the story going forward.
Arcs 5 to 7 are a part of the same saga, which I call the Introduction Saga, as here we are introduced 2 more of the power system.
Uzumaki is introduced, and we see more of the context and motivations for our characters, goals/dreams. Moreover, we see Kuro and Shiro get introduced to how the power system works.
Arc 8 and 9 are a part of the same saga, called the Growth Saga, as we are shown the growth of Kuro and Shiro and what paths they could be on in the future. Arc 10 to 12 are a part of the same saga, the World Saga, named this way due to how we are getting an introduction to what the world actually is like with the things that run in the background to keep it afloat. Arc 13 is a part of a saga of future arcs, but I'm not including them in this video as it's getting long. I'll tell you the name, the Shinjuanhi Saga. With this piece of information, I don't think it would be hard to assume what this arc could be about.
Currently, I'm planning my story. How I do that is basically make a summary for arcs, think of some plot lines that could potentially be in it. Then I start making plans for chapters. Short ones, which I can expand later, till I'm ready to write something. Currently, I'm working on making changes to Arc 5 and 6-2 better, introduce the members of Uzumaki. You guys should check out this video if you're interested in the powers in this world. Comment down below what arc you are most interested in.